The Valari had never known war. For 12,000 cycles, their civilization had grown in peace under the protection of the Galactic Assembly. Their bodies were made of living crystal, beautiful and fragile, and they had built a society based on art, music, and the quiet study of the universe. Their home world, Thessia 9, was a paradise of floating gardens and singing towers. Then the harvesters came. Una was young, barely 30 cycles old, which was still childhood for her species. She worked in the Central Communications Hub, a job that was usually boring. She monitored signals, logged transmissions, and dreamed of one day traveling to other worlds. She had never imagined that she would be the one to send the most important message in her planet's history. The first attack came without warning. Ships appeared in the sky like black wounds in the fabric of space. They were not beautiful like assembly vessels. They were ugly, organic things that looked like they had been grown rather than built. The harvesters did not send greetings or demands. They simply began to kill. Una watched from the communication tower as her city burned. The crystal structures that had stood for thousands of years shattered under weapons fire. She could hear screaming through the walls, though Valari voices were more like singing. Now they sang songs of terror and death. Her supervisor, an old Valari named Golan, grabbed her arm with a trembling tendril. His crystal body was cracked from debris, and light leaked from his wounds like blood. "The beacon," he said. "You must activate the emergency beacon." "The assembly will come," Una said. "They have to come. We are members. They swore to protect us." Golan's light dimmed. He had lived long enough to know the truth. "The assembly will debate. They will form committees. They will express concern and offer condolences. But they will not fight the harvesters. No one fights the harvesters." "Then why send a beacon at all?" "Because someone might hear it." Golan pressed his tendril against her face, a gesture of deep affection. "Because hope is all we have left. Send the message, little one. Send it everywhere." He died moments later, his crystal form going dark and silent. Una held him for a long moment, then gently set him down and turned to the console. Her tendrils moved across the controls. She set the beacon to broadcast on every frequency, through every relay, to every corner of the galaxy. She did not know the right words. She did not know if anyone would listen. She simply spoke the truth. "This is Thessia 9. We are under attack. The harvesters are killing us. We have no weapons. We have no army. We are dying. Please, anyone who can hear this, please help us. Please." She sent the message and then sent it again. And again. Outside, the sky burned orange and red, and the screaming continued. The signal traveled at the speed of light through relay stations that boosted it across the darkness between stars. It passed through assembly space, where dozens of species received it, read it, and did nothing. The harvesters were too powerful. The risk was too great. Better to mourn the Valari than to join them in death. But the signal did not stop at the borders of civilized space. It continued outward, past the warning beacons, past the quarantine markers, to a small blue planet on the edge of the spiral arm. The Galactic Assembly had many names for this world: Death Planet 7736, the Madhouse, the Mistake. It was a world of extreme gravity, violent weather, and endless predators. Its atmosphere contained a gas called oxygen that was highly reactive and poisonous to most life. Its dominant species had evolved in this hell and become something that terrified the rest of the galaxy. The humans called their world Earth. Captain Park Do-hyun received the signal during a routine patrol near Saturn. He was 43 years old, with gray in his short black hair and scars on his hands from the Belt Wars. His ship, the destroyer Hawk, was small and old, but his crew was good. "Sir," said Lieutenant Kim Sora, his communications officer. She was young and eager. with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. "I'm picking up a distress signal. It's coming through the old assembly relays." "Assembly traffic?" Do-Yun raised an eyebrow. "We're not supposed to receive that." "Someone set it to broadcast universally. It's a general distress call." She paused, listening to her earpiece. "Sir, it's bad. The Valari are under attack, something called harvesters." Do-Yun knew the name. Everyone in the fleet knew it. The harvesters were monsters from the deep galaxy, a species that consumed others. They had destroyed dozens of civilizations while the assembly watched and did nothing. "Play it." Sora put the message on speakers. The voice was strange, almost musical, but the fear in it was universal. "Please help us. Please." The bridge was silent. "Sir," Sora said quietly, "the assembly quarantined us. If we respond, if we leave our space, it could mean war." Do-Yun stared at the star map. The Valari homeworld was marked in red deep inside assembly territory. Getting there would mean crossing borders that humanity had been forbidden to cross for 200 years. It would mean risking everything. He thought about the voice on the recording. He thought about the fear. He thought about what it meant to be alone in the dark, crying for help, while the universe ignored you. "Get me Fleet Command," he said. "Priority channel." "Sir, what do I tell them?" Do-Yun looked at his crew. They were young, most of them. They had never seen real war, but he saw something in their eyes that made him proud. Not fear, not hesitation, just a simple, quiet readiness. "Tell them someone called for help," he said, "and ask them what kind of people we want to be." The message reached Fleet Command on Earth within minutes. Within hours, it had reached every admiral, every council member, every citizen who cared to listen. The debate was fierce but short. Humanity had spent 2 centuries in quarantine, locked away from the galaxy because they were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. They had been told they were monsters. Now someone was crying in the dark, and the monsters were the only ones willing to answer. The 7th Expeditionary Fleet began mobilizing before dawn, and in a burning tower on a dying world, Yuna sent her message one more time, not knowing that across the stars something was waking up. Something was coming. The Deathworlders had heard. The Galactic Assembly had quarantined Earth for 200 years. The reason was simple. Humans were terrifying. Most intelligent species in the galaxy evolved on gentle worlds, planets with low gravity, stable climates, and few predators. These species developed slowly, peacefully, building civilizations over millions of years. They learned to cooperate because cooperation was easy. They never needed to fight because there was nothing to fight. Earth was different. Earth had high gravity that crushed bones and built muscle. It had an atmosphere filled with oxygen, a gas so reactive that it could burn metal. It had weather that ranged from frozen wastelands to boiling deserts, sometimes in the same region. It had earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, and floods. It had diseases that evolved faster than medicine could cure them. It had predators that hunted in packs, alone from the sky, from the water, and from the shadows. And somehow, humans had survived all of it. When the Assembly first made contact with Earth, they expected to find a primitive species struggling to exist. Instead, they found a civilization that had split the atom, walked on their moon, and was already reaching for the stars. They found a species that healed wounds that should have killed them, survived injuries that would destroy most aliens, and kept fighting long after they should have surrendered. They found Deathworlders. The Assembly's solution was quarantine. Keep the humans contained. Let them develop in isolation. Hope they never spread beyond their solar system. But now someone had called for help, and the Deathworlders were preparing to answer. Admiral Choi Mirai stood in the war room of Fleet Command, watching officers rush between stations. She was 60 years old, with silver hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had fought in the Belt Wars, the Mars Rebellion, and a dozen smaller conflicts. She knew war better than most people knew peace. "Show me the situation," she said. A holographic map appeared, showing the Valari system. Red markers indicated harvester positions. Blue markers showed the Valari population centers, most of them already destroyed or under attack. "The harvesters have approximately 40 combat vessels," reported Commander Ojisu, her chief of staff. He was a thin man with nervous hands, but a brilliant tactical mind. "They're moving slowly, systematically wiping out population centers. At current pace, they'll reach the Valari capital in 6 days. "And the assembly?" "Still debating." Jisu's voice was bitter. The Paleth proposed a strongly worded condemnation. The Mokhtal suggested establishing a refugee program for survivors. No one has proposed actually fighting. Mirai nodded slowly. She had expected nothing different. The assembly was built on peace, and peace had made them weak. They had forgotten that sometimes the only way to save something was to fight for it. "What about Earth? What's the Council saying?" "The Council is divided, Admiral. Some members want to intervene. Others warn that breaking quarantine could mean war with the Assembly itself." "The Assembly won't fight us," Mirai said. "They're too afraid of us. That's why they put up the quarantine in the first place." She turned to face her officers. They were good people, all of them, soldiers who had trained their whole lives for battles they hoped would never come. Now they were being asked to cross half the galaxy to save a species they had never met. "I'm going to speak to the Council," she said. "I want the 7th Fleet ready to launch in 36 hours. Jisu hesitated. "Admiral, that's barely enough time to—" "Then we better get started." The council chamber was built in the old style, with wooden panels and leather seats. It was meant to remind humanity's leaders of where they came from, of the long history that had brought them to the stars. Council leader Baek Jinho sat at the head of the table, his face lined with worry. "Admiral Choi," he said as she entered, "I assume you're here to argue for intervention." "I'm here to tell you that we're going," Mirai replied. "The only question is whether the Council supports us or not." The room erupted in protests. Representatives shouted about treaties, risks, and consequences. Mirai let them yell until they ran out of breath. "Are you finished?" she asked. "Good. Now let me tell you what happens if we don't go. The Valari die, all of them. Every man, woman, and child on that planet gets harvested for fuel, and then the harvesters move on to the next world and the next, while the Assembly watches and writes sympathy letters." "That's not our concern," said Representative Nam Suho, an older man who had always opposed military expansion. "We have our own problems, our own people to protect." "Our own people." Mirai laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Representative, do you know why the galaxy fears us? It's not because of our weapons or our ships. It's because we do things that make no sense to them. We run into burning buildings to save strangers. We jump on grenades to protect our friends. We cross oceans to fight wars that have nothing to do with us, just because we think it's the right thing to do." She looked around the room. "That's what makes us human. Not our DNA, not our biology, our choices. And right now, someone is dying, and they're asking for help. What do we choose?" The vote took 3 hours. There were arguments, threats, and several representatives who walked out in protest. But when it was done, the result was clear. The 7th Expeditionary Fleet would launch at dawn. Mirai returned to Fleet Command to find her ships already preparing. Destroyers loaded missiles. Carriers launched diagnostic flights. Marines checked their armor and weapons. The massive flagship, unyielding, hummed with power as its engines came online. Captain Doyun met her at the command deck. He had requested transfer to the expedition, and Mirai had approved it without hesitation. She needed officers who understood why this mission mattered. "The crew is ready," he reported. "Morale is high. Everyone wants to be part of this. They know the risks. They know." Do-yun smiled slightly. They also know that a planet full of people is dying while the rest of the galaxy watches. That bothers them more than the risks. Mirai nodded. It should. At dawn, the fleet departed. 12 destroyers, 4 carriers, and 2,000 Marines. As they crossed the boundary of human space, they passed the quarantine beacons that had kept humanity locked away for 2 centuries. The beacons screamed warnings in a dozen languages. Dangerous species. Do not approach. Turn back. The fleet ignored them. Admiral Mirai stood on the bridge of the Unyielding and watched the stars stretch into lines as they jumped to faster-than-light travel. She thought about the Valari dying on their distant world. She thought about the Assembly, too afraid to help. She thought about what it meant to be human in a galaxy that feared and hated them. Then she smiled. Let them fear us, she thought. Let them see what Deathworlders do when someone asks for help. Let them see what we become when we have something worth fighting for. The fleet vanished into the darkness between stars, racing toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. In the 5 days since the harvesters arrived, her beautiful world had become a graveyard. The singing towers were silent. The floating gardens had crashed to earth. The crystal bodies of her people lay scattered everywhere, their light gone forever. She had survived by hiding, by running, by being small and lucky. She had found other survivors, a few hundred refugees huddled in the ruins of what had once been a library. They had no food, no medicine, and no hope. The Assembly had sent a message expressing deep sympathy and promising to review the situation at their next scheduled meeting. That meeting was in 3 weeks. They would all be dead by then. Yuna sat in the corner of the ruined building, her crystalline body dim with exhaustion and grief. A young Valari child pressed against her side, too scared to make a sound. Its parents had been harvested yesterday, their beautiful forms dragged away by the monsters to be converted into fuel. The sky is changing, someone said. Yuna looked up. Through a hole in the ceiling, she could see the orange sky of her burning world. But something was different. There were new lights up there. Moving lights. More harvesters? She whispered. No. The speaker was an old Valari astronomer named Kiran. His crystal form was cracked and dull, but his mind was still sharp. These are different. These ships. I've never seen anything like them. The lights grew brighter. Dozens of them. They moved wrong, too fast, with sharp angles instead of curves. As they descended through the atmosphere, Yuna saw their shapes clearly for the first time. They were ugly, angular and dark, covered in weapons and armor. They looked like predators. Then a voice crackled through every speaker, every communication device, every surviving piece of technology on the planet. It spoke in accented Valari, clearly translated by a computer, but the meaning was clear. Valari people, this is Captain Park Do-hyun of the Earth vessel Unyielding. We received your call for help. We are here now. Do not be afraid. Earth. Yuna knew that word. Everyone in the galaxy knew it. Death Planet. The Madhouse. The world of monsters that the Assembly had locked away because they were too dangerous to be free. And they had come. The human ships landed in a clearing near the refugee shelter. Yuna watched through a crack in the wall as the doors opened and figures emerged. Her first thought was that they were robots. They were huge, twice the height of a Valari, wrapped in hard shells of metal and carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Then one of them removed its head covering. It was a face unlike anything Yuna had seen, soft and flexible, with 2 small eyes and strange, flat features. The creature, the human, had dark hair pulled back tightly and skin the color of sand. It looked around at the ruins, at the bodies, at the distant fires, and something in its expression changed. It looked sad. Sergeant Han Yunji, 3rd Squad, the human said into a device on its wrist. "We've got survivors here. Sending coordinates. Need medical and supplies, lots of both." More humans emerged from the ships. They spread out through the ruins, their movements quick and purposeful. Yuna watched them check bodies, mark locations, set up strange machines that hummed and beeped. They worked like soldiers. But there was something else in how they moved, something gentle. The human called Yunji approached the refugee shelter. The Volari inside pressed back in fear, their crystal bodies dimming. Yunji stopped at the entrance, making no move to force her way in. "Hello," she said. Her voice was deep and strange, but her tone was soft. "My name is Yunji. I'm here to help. We have food, water, medicine. Can I come in?" No one answered. No one moved. Yunji slowly reached into a pouch at her side and pulled out a small package. She opened it to reveal a bar of something brown and dense. She broke off a piece, put it in her mouth, and chewed. "See? Safe to eat." She held out the rest of the bar. "Anyone hungry?" The Volari child next to Yuna moved first. It crawled forward before anyone could stop it, reaching out with tiny tendrils toward the strange food. Yunji knelt down, making herself smaller, and let the child take the bar. The child ate. Then it looked up at Yunji and made a soft, chiming sound. The Volari way of saying thank you. Yunji smiled. It was a strange expression, showing teeth in a way that would mean aggression in most species, but somehow it looked kind. "You're welcome, little one," she said. After that, the other Volari began to emerge. They were still afraid, but hunger and desperation overcame fear. The humans gave them food, water, and blankets. They treated wounds with devices that sealed crystal cracks and restored dimmed light. They spoke softly and moved carefully, always asking permission before touching. Yuna finally found the courage to approach one of the humans. It was a young male with a gentle face and careful hands. His name tag said Yun Tae-hee. "Why?" she asked through a translator device he gave her. "Why did you come? Your people and ours are strangers. The assembly told us you were dangerous. They said you were monsters." Tae-hee considered the question. His eyes moved across the ruins, the bodies, the frightened survivors. "We are dangerous," he said quietly. "We can be monsters. Our history is full of terrible things we've done to each other." He looked back at her. "But we also know what it's like to suffer, to be alone, to cry for help, and hear nothing but silence." He gestured to his fellow soldiers who were carrying supplies, treating wounded, comforting children. "These people volunteered for this mission," he said. "They knew they might die. They came anyway because someone was hurting and asked for help." He shrugged. "Maybe that's what being human means. We break things, but we also fix them. We fight, but we also protect. We're monsters, but we're trying to be better." A transport ship landed nearby, and more humans emerged. Among them was a tall woman with silver hair and hard eyes. The other soldiers saluted her as she passed. This was Admiral Choi Mirai, the leader of the human fleet. She walked through the refugee camp, speaking briefly with her officers, observing the work being done. When she reached Yuna, she stopped. "You sent the distress call," she said. It was not a question. "Yes." Yuna's voice was small. "I did not think anyone would answer." Mirai nodded slowly. "The harvesters will reach this location in approximately 18 hours. We're evacuating as many of your people as we can, but we're also going to fight." "Fight?" Yuna's crystal body flickered with confusion. "But the harvesters have never lost. They destroyed 40 species before us. They never fought humans before." Mirai's expression was calm, almost peaceful. "They don't know what we are. They don't know what we can do." She put a hand on Yuna's shoulder, a gesture that felt strangely natural despite their different forms. "You called for help, and we came. Now we're going to show the galaxy what happens when Deathworlders answer." She walked away, already giving orders, preparing for a battle that no one believed humans could win. But Yuna had seen something in the Admiral's eyes, something she had not seen in any assembly species in all her years: certainty, not hope, not faith, but absolute certainty that they would win. For the first time since the attack began, Yuna felt something other than despair. She felt safe. The Harvesters had been conquering worlds for 3,000 years. They had evolved on a cold, dark planet where resources were scarce, and they had learned to take what they needed from others. Their ships were grown from living matter, powered by the converted remains of their victims. They did not negotiate or show mercy. They simply consumed. In all their long history, they had never lost a war. They did not expect to lose this one. The Harvester Fleet commander watched the human ships through sensors that had been grown from conquered species. There were only 12 combat vessels, plus 4 larger support ships. Compared to the 40 Harvester warships, it seemed like a joke. "The prey has brought friends," the commander said in the clicking language of its kind. "They will make good fuel." "The ships are strange," reported a subordinate. "Dense, heavily armed. They read as containing life forms, but the gravity signatures are unusual." "It does not matter. Attack formation. Consume them all." The Harvester fleet moved forward, confident in their victory. They had done this hundreds of times before. Soon the strange ships would be debris, and the soft creatures inside would be processed into energy. They were wrong. Admiral Mireille stood on the bridge of the Unyielding, watching the enemy approach. Around her, officers worked their stations with calm efficiency. There was no panic, no fear, just quiet focus. "All ships report ready," said Captain Do Yun from his position at the tactical station. "Weapons hot. Shields at full." "The Harvesters are closing," reported Lieutenant Sora. "They're not even trying to flank us. They're coming straight in." "Of course they are," Mireille said. "They think we're prey. They've never met a predator before." She straightened in her chair. "All ships. This is Admiral Mireille. These creatures have killed millions of innocents. They thought they were unstoppable. Today, we teach them otherwise. For Earth, for the Velari, and for everyone who has ever been told that no one would come to help. Attack." The human fleet moved. The Harvesters expected slow, cautious maneuvers. Instead, the human ships accelerated at speeds that should have killed their crews. They scattered into attack patterns that made no logical sense, splitting the enemy's targeting solutions. They did not retreat or defend. They attacked. The first Harvester ship died before it could fire a shot. Human missiles punched through its organic hull in a dozen places, and the internal explosions tore it apart. 2 more died seconds later, caught in crossfire they never saw coming. "They're too fast," the Harvester commander clicked in confusion. "How are they moving so fast? The crew should be dead from the acceleration." "They are not dying," the subordinate reported. "They are continuing to accelerate. Their bodies are surviving forces that would destroy any known species." Impossible. But it was happening. Human ships danced through the battle like predators born to this environment. Their weapons adapted in real time, finding weak points in Harvester biology and exploiting them. When one approach failed, they immediately tried another. They learned, adjusted, and improved with terrifying speed. On the ground, the battle was even more intense. Harvester landing parties had been sent to capture more Velari before the evacuation could finish. They expected easy prey. Instead, they found Sergeant Yunji and her squad waiting for them. "Contact front," Yunji called out. "Remember your training. These things are big and ugly, but they die just like anything else." The Harvesters charged. They were massive creatures, 3 meters tall with armored hides and bladed limbs. They had slaughtered thousands of Velari without effort. Yunji shot the first one through its central eye cluster. It dropped. She shot the second through what her briefing had called its brainstem. It dropped, too. Move and shoot, she ordered. Don't let them get close. Private Lee Junho took a position on her left flank. He was young, barely 22, with a quick smile and quicker reflexes. A harvester lunged at him, and he sidestepped its blade limb while putting 3 rounds into its throat. "These things are slower than the combat sims," he said. "I expected more. Don't get cocky." Yunji dropped another harvester with a headshot. "Stay focused." Corporal Shin Nari held the right flank. She was small and quiet, but her accuracy was legendary. She fired once, twice, 3 times. 3 harvesters fell. "Refugees are loading onto transports," she reported. "We need to buy them another 10 minutes. Then we buy them 10 minutes. The harvesters kept coming. They had numbers and raw strength, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Humans did not panic. Humans did not flee. Humans took wounds that would kill most species and kept fighting. Junho took a plasma burst to his shoulder. The impact spun him around and dropped him to one knee. Blood, red, alien, terrifying to the harvesters who had never seen anything like it, sprayed across the ground. "Junho!" Yunji started toward him. "I'm fine." He raised his rifle with his remaining arm and shot the harvester that had wounded him. "Just a scratch. Keep fighting." Nari took a blade across her back. She grunted, turned, and killed her attacker at point-blank range. Then she picked up 2 wounded Valari and started running toward the transports, covering over a kilometer of ground while bleeding from a wound that had exposed her spine. Lieutenant Bae Hyun-soo held a breach point alone when his squad was cut off. Harvesters poured through a gap in the defensive line, and he stood in their path with nothing but his rifle and a combat knife. 11 minutes. He held for 11 minutes, killing 17 harvesters before reinforcements arrived. "Why?" one harvester commander asked as it died, looking up at the human who had killed it. "Why do you fight so hard? This world is not yours." Hyun-soo changed his magazine and looked down at the dying creature. "Because someone asked for help," he said simply. "And we answer." In orbit, the harvester fleet was collapsing. More than half their ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest were trying to retreat, but human destroyers cut off their escape routes. Admiral Mireille watched the slaughter with cold satisfaction. This was not a battle anymore. It was a lesson. "Admiral," Do-hyun said, "enemy flagship is trying to flee. Should we pursue?" Mireille considered it. She could destroy them all. It would be easy. But she had not come here just to win a battle. She had come to send a message. "Let them go," she said. "Let them run home and tell their masters what happened here. Let them describe what they saw. Let every harvester who hears the story know what awaits them if they ever threaten innocents again." The human ships pulled back, allowing the surviving harvesters to escape. As the enemy fled, Mireille broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every ship in the system could hear her words. "This is Admiral Choi Mirai of the United Earth Defense Fleet. Thessia 9 is under our protection. The harvesters have been defeated. Any who return will find the same fate waiting for them. This world, and these people, belong to Earth now, and Earth protects its own." On the ground, the last transport lifted off with the final group of refugees. Yunji stood at the edge of the landing zone, watching it rise into the smoke-filled sky. Her armor was scorched and dented. Blood from a dozen wounds stained her suit. But she was smiling. Yuna approached her carefully. The young Valari had watched the battle from the shelter, had seen these strange creatures fight and bleed and die for her people. "You are hurt," Yuna said. "I'll be fine." Yunji turned to face her. "Are you okay? Did everyone make it?" "Yes, thanks to you." Yuna's crystal form flickered with emotion. "I do not understand. You were wounded. Many of your people were wounded. Some died, for us, strangers. Why?" Yunji was quiet for a moment. Then she knelt down, bringing her face level with Yuna's. "Because that's what we do," she said softly. "We're Deathworlders. We came from a world that tried to kill us every day, and we survived. We learned that the only way to make it through the darkness is to help each other." She touched Yuna's shoulder gently. "You called for help. We heard you. That's all that matters." Above them, the human fleet hung in orbit like guardian spirits. The battle was over, but the war for the soul of the galaxy had just begun. Representatives from 200 species filled the vast circular room, their voices raised in argument, accusation, and disbelief. The humans had broken quarantine. They had crossed into assembly space without permission. They had engaged in military action against a species that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. And they had won. "This is an outrage," declared the Paleth representative, a large being with thick gray skin and small, suspicious eyes. "The humans have violated every treaty they agreed to. They must be punished. Their fleet must be destroyed before they become an even greater threat." "Punished?" The voice came from the Valari delegation. The speaker was Yuna, who had traveled to the assembly at Admiral Mirai's invitation. Her crystal body still bore the cracks from the attack, but her light burned bright. "The humans saved my people. They came when no one else would. They bled for us, died for us, and you want to punish them?" "They broke the law," the Paleth insisted. "Your laws let my world burn." Yuna's voice was sharp. "Your laws watched 40 species die while you debated proper procedure. Your laws are worthless." The chamber erupted again, but this time something was different. Species that had been silent for centuries were speaking up. The Moktal, who had lost 3 colony worlds to the Harvesters, the Chirin, whose people had been harvested for fuel, the Endless, whose entire civilization had nearly been destroyed. One by one, they rose to speak. "The humans did what we could not," said the Moktal representative, "what we were too afraid to do." "They answered a call for help," said the Chirin delegate. "Is that not what civilization is supposed to mean? We have spent millennia telling ourselves that peace means never fighting," said the Endless ambassador. "But perhaps true peace means fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves." The debate continued for hours, but slowly the tide began to turn. Species that had feared the humans now looked at them with something different. Not exactly trust, not yet, but respect, curiosity, hope. When the vote was finally held, it was not close. The quarantine was lifted. Earth was welcomed into the Galactic Assembly, not as a dangerous species to be contained, but as a full member with all rights and responsibilities. Admiral Mirai received the news on the bridge of the Unyielding. She read the message twice, then handed it to Captain Do-hyun. "Well," he said, "I guess we're not monsters anymore." "We were never monsters." Mirai looked out at the stars. "We just needed a chance to show them what we really are." On Thessia 9, reconstruction had begun. Human engineers worked alongside Valari builders, repairing damaged structures and building new ones. Marine medics trained local healers in trauma care and emergency medicine. Ships from a dozen worlds arrived carrying supplies, food, and volunteers. The Assembly's relief effort had finally started, but it was the humans who led the way. Sergeant Yunji walked through the rebuilding capital city with Yuna at her side. The crystal towers were starting to rise again, though they would take years to fully restore. Valari children played in the streets, their musical laughter mixing with the sounds of construction. "Your people heal quickly," Yunji said. "We have hope now." Yuna watched a group of human and Valari workers raising a new structure together. "Before you came, we had given up. We thought we would die and no one would care. But you showed us that there are people in the universe who will fight for strangers. That changes everything." Yunji nodded. She understood. Her own people had learned that lesson long ago. In wars and disasters and countless small moments of courage, Humanity had been forged in hardship, but that hardship had taught them the value of standing together. "What happens now?" Yuna asked. "Now we keep going." Yunji gestured at the work around them. "We help you rebuild. We defend you if the harvesters come back. And we show the rest of the galaxy that this is what Earth stands for." "The Assembly is afraid of you," Yuna said quietly. "Many species still think you are dangerous." "We are dangerous." Yunji smiled slightly. "But dangerous doesn't mean evil. Fire is dangerous too, but it also keeps people warm. The question is how you choose to use your strength." Captain Do-hyun found them later that afternoon. He looked tired but satisfied. The evacuation had saved over 2 million Valari. Not everyone, but far more than anyone had hoped. "Admiral says we're shipping out tomorrow," he told Yunji. "There are other worlds that need help. Other species that the Assembly has abandoned." "Of course there are." Yunji was not surprised. "That's the thing about helping people. Once you start, you can't really stop." Do-hyun nodded. He turned to Yuna. "We'll be back. Earth doesn't forget its friends." Yuna's crystalline form shimmered with emotion. "I know you will. I used to wonder why your people were the way they are. Why you would risk everything for strangers. Why you would cross the stars to answer a call from someone you had never met." "And now?" Yuna thought about everything she had seen. The soldiers who fought through injuries that should have killed them. The medics who worked without rest to save alien lives. The admiral who stood against the entire galaxy because someone needed help. "Now I understand," she said. "Your world is harsh. Your lives are short. You have every reason to be cruel and selfish and afraid. But instead, you choose to be kind. You choose to protect. You choose to answer when someone calls for help." She touched Do-hyun's hand with her crystal tendril. "That is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had voted to break quarantine and risk war to save strangers. He thought about his crew who had volunteered knowing they might die. He thought about all the dark moments in human history, all the wars and atrocities and failures, and he thought about the moments of light that kept breaking through. "We're not perfect," he finally said. "We've done terrible things. We'll probably do terrible things again. But we keep trying to be better. We keep reaching for something higher than ourselves." He looked up at the unfamiliar stars of the Valari sky. Maybe that's what being human means. Not being good, but choosing to try. The unyielding departed the next morning. As it rose through the atmosphere, Yuna watched from the roof of the half-rebuilt communications center. Around her, other Valari gathered to watch the human ship leave. "Will they come back?" a young one asked. "Yes," Yuna said with certainty. "They will always come back." The ship disappeared into the clouds, then into the blackness of space, but its legacy remained. Across the galaxy, the story of Thessia 9 spread. Species who had lived in fear learned that there was a world full of creatures who would fight for those who could not fight for themselves. In dark corners of the galaxy, tyrants and conquerors heard the story too. They heard how the harvesters had been broken. They heard about the strange, dangerous species from the quarantine zone who had crossed the stars to answer a cry for help. And for the first time in millennia, they felt something they had never felt before. Fear. Not of human weapons or ships or soldiers, but of what humans represented. A galaxy where the strong protected the weak. A universe where no cry for help went unanswered. A future where darkness could not win, because there would always be someone willing to stand against it. On Earth, the unyielding was welcomed home as heroes. But Admiral Mireille did not celebrate. She was already planning the next mission, reading reports of other worlds under threat, other species calling into the darkness. "There's so much work to do," she said to Do-hyun. "So many people who need help." "Then we better get started," he replied. And somewhere in the vastness of space, on 1,000 different worlds, the message spread. A new phrase in 100 languages, whispered like a prayer and a promise. When darkness falls, call the Deathworlders. They answer. The stars were no longer cold and empty. They were full of hope, because someone had called for help, and humans had answered.